From Mary Shelley's Frankenstein to the Lucas and Roddenberry franchises, the Martian Chronicles, and beyond, science fiction is undeniably a part of our culture. But what exactly is science fiction? And how do you write a science fiction novel? This series will attempt to answer those questions. Hi, welcome to another episode of Live Science Fiction. Today in studio, we have Adam returning, and we're going to be talking about his upcoming book. And the process is Science Fiction Live. So we're going to welcome Adam to the studio. Adam.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
Pretty good. So how's it going? How's the writing going? I know you're always conflicted daily with the just trying to stay on top of things. And are you finding you're getting enough time to put aside to do a little bit of creativity and writing?
Well, I think the answer is always no, never enough. I try and stick to at least get something down week to week or whatever. I would love to spend 2 hours every day just playing in this world. It's a lot of fun. But such is life. Like, for example, this week I was writing. It's kind of a day in the life, right? The character has kind of gotten up in the morning, and now it's life is happening. We were postulating what litigation would look like in this virtual future. So I was writing, and we had this notion that it's way more efficient if two kind of call them AI constructs just sort of decide what the best thing is, and there you go, sign here, and then you're done, right? Not necessarily the games that we play right now with each other, where the lawyers maneuver and try and convince each other and lie and cheat, and right? It's just done. But the cool part about that is, somebody outside your window.
Oh, can you hear that?
Yeah, there you go. Why not?
You can hear that? Okay. Well, we have to explain to listeners what that is, and if it's too horrific, then it might, we might have to reschedule it. But what it is that we're getting a new roof on the house.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah, metal roof. So we went from cedar shakes to metal roof, and the contractors are doing that. Honestly, I've got these headphones on. I can't, but if it's, just raise your hand if that's, we'll have to just,
No, it's fine. It's just in the background. You hear the saw roads. So I imagine this litigation, right? Like, your company, Danco, has an AI construct that kind of does its thing. I have my own, and then we're in conflict, and one of them decides that the shortest way to a resolution is just to sue you, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So then I just get an alert, says show up, and the two A's show up, two AIs, they exchange information, and then the path of least resistance is agreed to, and then it's done. Either you owe me or I owe you, and it's done. And we're just there to bear witness. There's not really much we can do about it. That's kind of how I imagined kind of a faster, more efficient way to get stuff done in this world. Now, once I got into it, though, and this is the cool thing about writing, once I started writing that process, I hadn't intended it for it to be this long, drawn out thing. I just kind of wanted to show it as a blip in its day. But it did turn out into this big, long thing. And the reason is because as humans, we like to be emotionally involved in the process. So when I was imagining what it would be like to show up and just have to sit there and wait, and then it tells you, oh, you owe $1 million, how upset I would be and pissed off about that. Even if I knew short term or long term, it was better for everybody involved, if that's just kind of how it worked. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I used to work as a pipeline engineer, there was this company that had built a software that they said, you could input, the various inputs that goes into choosing a pipeline route, right? Like water features, nearby towns, environmental things, slope, all these types of things. And then it would iterate and it would just find the ideal route. Right. And their argument was like, well, how isn't that much more amazing than spending tens of thousands of hours meeting with communities and doing environmental assessments? And you know what I mean? And you're going to end up at the same, if not better solution much faster. The reason that doesn't work is in a situation like that, not everyone is going to be happy with the result or completely happy, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just give a computer printout to someone and say, oh, the pipeline's running through your town, but that's really the best solution. So too bad. Unless they've been part of the process through the whole time and they've had that emotional journey where they've contributed and they've argued and they've accepted and now they're on board. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like being sued is the same thing. If I don't have a chance to defend myself and say my piece and say that guy's lying or this is bullshit or whatever, I'm going to be really upset. And that's kind of what I don't know where my mind went as I was writing this. Was kind of like, even if this happened, even if I'm on board with the process, this is how it works, not arguing with it. I just know, so my character, when the blip came up, instead of just another task, it was kind of this big like sigh, like, ugh, this is going to be a shitty day because I'm going to go in there. Maybe I'm going to win, maybe I'm not. But regardless, I'm going to feel like I don't have a say and it's going to make me cranky. It's going to piss me off, right?
Yeah. Well, think about it from the standpoint of an audit, right? So the government comes to us and says, a respective company or something and says, all right, you're going to be audited. So we want to see your financial books, right? Mm-hmm. So that email that you're talking about in the or notification in the world, the fictional world, right? Mm-hmm. How did you imagine the entity, right? We'll call it the overseer, information gatherer, like how do they gather the information? And then what are the limits of that information that they gather? I'm curious about that.
Well, this is where we're like, okay, we're in this completely virtual space. I mean, maybe we call it the metaverse, since that's a thing now. Mm-hmm. Right? We said with all this artificial intelligence running around, your data is tracked all the time. Anyway, it's not like you can hide anything, right? So this is why this works, because data here, data there, an exchange of data. There's no real lies or fudging or changing the books or whatever. There's just big ass data and these constructs that just process it and say, thou art the solution. So that's kind of how we imagine when you live in here, there's the certain, obviously, data is sensitive. So you would have your data obviously in a place that's restricted, but it's also going to interact with other things. And then, but you have something like a litigation conflict that's going to come in and have access to everything regardless. So it's kind of how I pictured it. That's why it would work, because
you might want to think of, the technology of decentralized currency. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what happens, and I mean, it's a popular one. So we here's the thing that I would encourage us to do in terms of content creation is that we start to develop that idea and then and develop a little short, an introduction, something that talks about that social thing. So let's say, for example, that you buy into the fact or buy into the concept of the cryptocurrency. Well, then the message, the marketing message related to your book can talk about how you took that technology and integrated it into a decentralized structure. Now, I don't know a lot about decentralized currencies of Bitcoin and stuff like that. It is a forefront of a conversation at this point in time. And I think we're really up against the conservative mainstay of economies and relatively stable economies that are saying, why would I really need to have a monetary system that's like decentralized? For what reason? Like, are we talking horrendous corruption? I mean, there's people on the planet that think that is the case, but I think, for the most part, we live in a fairly equitable, at least in the West, we live in a fairly equitable and just society, right? I mean, there's a lot of things kind of going in that direction. So I will bring this back to a point. Say, if
individually identifying data was had the confidence of the people that it was not like you couldn't track Adam in an Orwellian way, right? And this became, we could really see the upside of having a society that relied on predictive, on more of a more data collection and more enhanced predictability on correlated events, right? Okay, and I know it doesn't imply causation, but the thing is that this is how we have to start grappling with, big data systems, right? Like, where's the upside for humanity, right? Like, where's the potential? And so I think you're really on the forefront of uncovering that. And what you just explained to the listeners and the viewers is that you're putting some serious thought into that, right? And I think that's a unique human ability.
Well, and you just gave me kind of an idea to make it better, I think. So two things. First, on the decentralized currency, I think, if you imagine this virtual world where now we're interacting and doing business, boundaries become completely, physical. Country boundaries are defined by geographical lines, right? In a virtual world, no such thing. I can talk to somebody in Sweden and in Australia, and it's like we're standing in the same room. It doesn't matter, right? Like Dan, you could be on the moon.
On a roof right now, putting the roof on. Yeah, I could be, right?
Exactly. So all of a sudden, we're doing business and interacting, yet we're constrained by physical constraints that no longer make sense. So, for example, I have a business partner in Spain. We try and invoice each other. The bank wants to charge us a ton of money in fees to transfer money back and forth, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, me as a small business, I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I pay those fees? I'm going to go use a decentralized currency because this doesn't make sense from what I'm trying to do right now, right? And I think you're seeing this rise of small business happening right now, right? There's all sorts of things going on in the world. The Great Resignation, all this type of stuff is driving small business, entrepreneurship, blah, blah, blah. So I think this is why centralized currencies will become the thing. I don't think there's no stopping it. I think
you've tapped into something, because not only if in the as the byproduct of our business activities today, separate from the book, if that bank account for whatever decentralized currency starts to grow, the upside that decentralized currency is actually providing right now is that there's an appreciation of value on the actual. So that's like we put $10,000 into this account slowly, and this ends up being something that we're doing that's budgeted for whatever. Now, all of a sudden, Adam, you go in on a Monday morning and you look at your $10,000 equivalent bank account, and Bitcoin is now shot up, and now it's 40 or 50,000. You're like, oh, okay, I'm actually like 5 times more. I have 5 times more ability to actually use this as a mechanism of exchange, right? Like, so it is actually pretty interesting. Because it has that upside of like finance, right? In the in the mechanism. I think there's a possibility that you might be right.
Well, and right now we are using centralized currency, and then we got this non-centralized. So as it goes up and down, it's very obvious, right? It's like a boat tied with an anchor or something, right? But the more and more people use it, eventually, if you're all using it, if it goes up and down, doesn't really matter. We're all relative to each other anyway. So, right? So, but what I think is cool that you brought up is this idea of big data, right? Because big data says there's enough data. If you have enough data, you can predict human behavior. So you can profile somebody, right? And the example I liked in a book I read called Big Data, actually, I think it was suggested by you.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that because now I understand big data. After I read that, I get it now.
I'm so happy you read that, because it is such a, it opens your eyes on some of the possibilities without making it feel too Orwellian. Like, there's a way through this forest, I think.
Yeah, and this was really interesting because Caitlin and I both read it, and she hated it. She's like, "Oh my God, I couldn't do it," and I couldn't get enough. I was just like, "This is amazing!" It just kind of hit, that mathematical piece of my brain that this is pretty much the greatest thing ever.
Really? Oh, that's so great. I feel disappointed about Kate, though, only because when I make a book recommendation, right, I don't want someone to feel that, right? And so I'm glad you liked it. Yeah.
But the example I liked was, let's say, a teenager, right? Some 17-year-old sitting home about to kind of engage as an adult in the world, right? They're have certain behaviors. They're purchasing certain things and they're going to certain places and hanging around with certain groups. If you have enough data, you could flag that person and say, this person is likely to commit a crime within the next year, right? 79% probability based on this. Now, here's the ethical part, right? This is in the book was, what do you do? They haven't done anything, right? This isn't Minority Report. You can't just go there and be like, you are now required to attend, some rehabilitation center to get you on the right path or whatever, because we're pretty sure you're going to commit a crime based on your habits, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't really sit well.
No.
Right? It doesn't matter if you're right. But this idea of back to this like being sued, I had imagined that like, someone else's AI had notified them, hey, we're going to sue this person, so they'd be kind of in the or whatever. But what if we took it a step further and said that the construct had predicted based on our behavior that you would be in violation of something at some point, so you were being litigated to course correct before it happens, which is cheaper for everybody. So I'm being sued by something I haven't done yet because the system has predicted that based on some behaviors, I'm going to do it. Like that is more interesting.
Yeah.
So I think
let me add another flavor about how I process the unfolding of a personal data. I'm not even saying that right. Let me see if I can frame that a little better. Let me add something that I think will, I guess, provide more nuance to your thinking and position on the value of big data. Okay, so when you in your example, I think that if the alerts were more individualized, okay, then it's up to the individual if they want to do anything about it, right? Okay, so what and I think that the thing about human behavior, and this is something that I've been interested in, for almost a decade. And a good book to read, which I'll put up, and this is a perfect layout because you've got your artwork behind you, and you're gonna see when I release the video, we're gonna put the big data book up above my head, and we're gonna also put Robert Sapolsky's book Behave on there. Now it's a monster, right? It's a big book, but he comes at it from a biological standpoint. And when I think about big data and having information, and I think about autonomous individual behavior and what you were talking about at the beginning of the show, that we need to go through this process. The lesson to learn about this is that our behavior brings out the best and the worst of us. So what's part of the human behavior is there is an aspect of deceit, right? There is an aspect of, I'm not saying that we encourage that, but we all have the capability to be, kind of on the bad side and kind of on the good side. And it's that contrast that allows us to be able to, kind of navigate this complex environment of eusociality, right? We're a social animal. I want to give you an example of somebody who, let's say that the zeitgeist or the dominating culture, and we can write this into a novel or not, but if the dominating, and Kate will like this is where I throw in the, the climate change bit, right? But if the dominating behavior is let's not do anything about it, right? Like everything's fine, it's not a big deal. But you have Jim Smith at the end of the street. Okay, now he has a composting toilet. He takes his, food waste out to a compost on his property, all these kinds of things, right? But he has neighbors that are fairly close by. So he's thinking, oh man, like I don't want to be singled out. I really think this is the best way to live, right? So he finds himself kind of being a little sneaky. Like he doesn't, advertise that he's taking his compost out. He's not breaking any laws. There's nothing like that. But there is this normative sort of acceptance. And sometimes the norms may be ahead of the social milieu, right? And so we need this ability to give, freedom of choice, freedom of action without it feeling that it's bearing down on us. So in my opinion, the best use of an individual, if you're going to preserve an individualistic society, which you and I are a part of in North America, maybe second to the United States, quintessentially, they're the most individualistic society. But if we want to maintain this autonomy, then I think that we need to understand what data means when it represents groups, right? So we're both entrepreneurs. We're both artists, we're both writers, we're both, these types of things. So we have this dynamic about us. Now, Jordan Peterson has talked about this, that if we decide to go outside of the norm, which an entrepreneur by definition does, then you're getting into shakier territory. You're not following the norm. We have to invent and move towards novelty in order to try and find something of value to us that we can capitalize on, and then something that the society says is valuable as well, right? So when we are out in this danger zone, so to speak, then we have to forge new paths, and it is riskier. And so let's say that you and I woke up in the morning and we both got alerts that X, Y, and Z. Now, what we have to do in our head is balance that to say, that's interesting. Do I act on that information? Or do I move forward maybe a little bit more cautiously, right? And so it's part of the picture, but not all of the picture. And that's what I'm saying. And I think that it's how do you think about? Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you?
I think so. I mean, I think that this is maybe the balance we're trying to walk here, right? As an individual, I have, always go to the matrix, the illusion of choice, right? Something that's been presented in front of me, I choose that, therefore I have free will, right? But if we're all subject to the same influences, right? And this is back to that big data conversation. Probably you can predict that I will choose this even before I've chosen it, right? Given my behavior, my history, whatever. I think I'm making my own free choice. The reality is it's predictable because there are a lot of other people kind of very similar to me in a very similar circumstance, and we're all biologically wired kind of the same. So we will choose that, right? Yeah. Which is why it takes, sometimes someone a little crazy to choose the other way, whether it's the entrepreneur or the out of the norm or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I think
you see the nuance between our not positions, but you see the nuance between the two of us. And I think this is very indicative of society because there's the position, I think, that's more on your side that says that people are a little bit more deterministic in groups as opposed to, I'm saying that we advocate for more individual autonomy, give people the information, and then we'll be collecting new data because we will be aware of that data, and then we'll be making more choices. So the example is going to be this: there's a bias that says that, or no, there's a data set that basically says that you're not going to marry your first love or second. It's basically your sixth major relationship. I don't know if that, maybe it's your fourth or third or something, but there's something that says you're not going to until maybe it's an age group or it's the frequency or the number. On average, that's what it is, right? So would we then kind of act in a way that said, as young adults in our early attempts at romance, we can't get through that. That doesn't matter. I mean, this is part of if you could sit down a 17-year-old and say, look, chances are this is not going to be your forever girlfriend or boyfriend or, partner, right? If we said that to, somebody younger or even our younger selves would be like, yeah, but, and you'd still go head first into it, right? It's like the young student getting in a vehicle and driving fast. We're prone to riskier behavior, especially in that age bracket that is young adult. This provides more information. And I think where we run into a danger is trying to enforce it or make it so that we don't have a way out that is, individually autonomous. Right. And I think that, we run into a danger if we have an overarching entity that does that, type of thing.
Well, I think I like how you describe it. I think this is ultimately what we're talking about here in our bigger story arc, right? Is that, in the future, everything's kind of virtual. There's all this artificial intelligence, and it has become a little bit deterministic, and we've lost that individual emotional piece, that creativity, that, that jump, right? In an idea. You just had an idea, as the way humans do. And even though it's crazy, you just feel that it's right and you're going to do it anyways, right? And I think that's kind of what we wanted to make a point about in this whole story, is take someone who is plugged into this deterministic thing and then pull them out, teach them a lesson, and then plug them back in and see what happens.
Yeah. And so this is a note to Kate right here, because I think her point of where she blasts off in the shuttle and has that panic attack, okay? Do some research, both of you, on anxiety. But I'm trying to try and find something about, the evolutionary justification or reason for feeling anxious. Okay, so let's say you're in that mode. You're like, oh shit, I don't have access to I'm not connected to the mainframe or to, this overarching sort of thing. But once I rely on some, innate abilities, and I battle through in a healthy way the anxiety that's descending on me, right? As I battle through that, I arrive at something better, right? And that might be a really, really relatable arc that I think would be, worth following, right? I mean,
I love that.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just a metaphor for change, which is what the whole world's going through right now anyways.
Yeah.
I really like that.
So I maybe what I should do is on the LinkedIn post, what I'm trying to do more of, I should see Kate, look at timestamp, blah, blah, blah. And, this is what, Adam and I talked about. What do you think? Because sometimes we don't have the time, even as producers of stuff, to listen to, hey, we know what we said, but I want to bring Kate back into this, even if she's on the
well, it might be fun to do a couple with just her as well.
Yeah.
Play it back to me. Like, I don't know.
I'll send notes and I'll go, hey, look at this, Adam, a timestamp, blah, 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 right?
What do you think?
And I've already thought, I'm going to put the books up here, right? I'm going to put those books because that's kind of cool. It gives us more screen real estate, especially if you take my, ugly mug and put me at the bottom and,
I think, I don't know. I guess this is why I'm enjoying this process, because and it's hard. It's a hard topic to write about, to be honest, right? Like, if I sit down and I've got half an hour, we'll just pump out a few words, but it takes me half an hour just to kind of like get into that space, to be honest.
Yeah.
Where I can really visualize what is happening here. Not just, the senses of what's happening in this virtual space, but like, how do I feel about that? If I was that person, what emotions would be coming out that are real and can be relatable, right? So I guess that's why I like it. We were really, we kind of picked a hard topic on the first one out of the gates. Is kind of what I'm realizing here, but it's an interesting one, I think.
So one thing I wanted to ask, okay, we've got 15 minutes left, and I found myself, trying to organize some stuff for you and Kate. Okay. I would like, and maybe you've already given it to me, and I do apologize if I haven't done this, but I'd like the framework of the book. Okay, so if we have a Google Doc or we have a Word doc,
Mhm.
please share it, because I think that putting the framework in place and starting to put the chapters in place, um, I might even offer some writing to put and fill, right? Instead of lipsum I might try and just, and I'm saying rewrite it if you want or whatever, but I might try and, because I think what we've got is some valuable
Yeah.
ideas here, right? And, rather than talking, I think sometimes editors, and I'm not wholeheartedly taking that role here, but I'm taking a role of a co-creator. So what I would like to be able to do is, and no promises, but if we had that, I could start filling out some stuff, right? Based off of what I'm seeing you guys talk about, I could start, being that third blind ghost writer. I don't mind if you write over it, right? But I might be able to help it make it a little bit more reified or concrete by filling in some of those things. So if there is a working document that you're working on, either Word or Google Doc, please share it, and then let's start seeing the structure of the chapter and where these significant points are taking place, and where Kate's section is and where your
Mhm.
sections are. And I know when I was writing Will Freeman, right? So this is a literary fiction about artificial intelligence. The chapters were separated based on who the characters are. So the the artificial intelligence is Sophia, representing wisdom, right? But then there's also Dr. Corey Elliott and a girl named Lucia, and Lucia and Dr. Corey Elliott and Sophia, they all have their names in brackets in the chapters. Now, whether or not it goes to print with that, it doesn't matter. But I see something where we could have a table of contents and then have bracket Adam, bracket Kate, bracket, these kinds of things. And then I can see how we're weaving
Mhm.
these together, right? So please do
Yeah.
that. And because I'm kind of, it's one of those ones where I think I feel the inspiration is there, the value's there to help add a little bit more, but I want to make sure we're all working off the same substrate, right?
Perfect. Already sent. Already sent.
Okay. Okay. So if you see, I don't know, maybe I'll try and change it so the words are a different color or something like that, or gray or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I think Kayla and I already expect that we will each, have a hand at writing
Yeah.
notes or
Okay.
whatever. We're gonna
Okay.
write this thing and tear it apart a ton of times. Right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but uh, yeah, there was one other piece that I had come out when I was writing this for the litigation piece. I had this bit where like a personnel issue like popped up, and it kind of said, well, usually kind of like either reassign you or get rid of you or whatever, right? It's
Wait
the
a
boss
minute,
said,
just so to clarify for the audience, what does get rid of you mean?
food with the fishes, right? Cut the noses,
Just
fire
like
the
all these
ears.
red dots going on here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Ah!
Yeah, well, that is a scary concept, right?
Or a delete button. Who the?
Exactly. But I had this concept because I was thinking about, with me have now, never mind 600 years, but like, wouldn't business systems just learn and automate and grow like with you based on how I interact? So like, if you and I are working together and we're sending information in a certain way, then I would expect that the systems that we use to just kind of evolve in, the way we're using it to continually optimize without me having to physically do it.
Mm.
So I was picturing this, and then surprise, personnel issue. What's the personnel issue? Oh, someone for like a development project permit or whatever. And I said a development project is like a request from a human for an improvement project to implement an idea to help things, right?
Okay.
And it was rejected. And my character is surprised that someone A would have the tenacity to actually apply for one, because who does that? The system just evolves on its own, and it's never really a problem.
Mm.
Right?
Let's talk about that a little bit more. Yeah, let's talk about that a little more. It's a little vague for me, but I like this.
Yeah, it kind of popped into my head. I was like, what could it be an interesting personnel issue? Like, what would make, what would make this a really good lead into a future character? Somebody has the balls to actually suggest to a evolving AI that they have an idea that could be better. And I'm like,
I've got it.
Right?
I've got it. This will take a little bit of finesse. Okay. I have a suggestion, only a suggestion.
Okay.
Your process as an engineer, okay, and Kate, to write a novel, okay, a science fiction novel. That's like you putting up your hand and say, hey, I've got a great idea, because probability is against that. So what I'm saying is, what if the character, and this is a little bit of like, maybe a little bit of interesting postmodern kind of like literature, but you'd say the character is actually writing a novel. They say, I want to write something. I want to be a writer. Right? Like, I want to write my if you want it a little bit different, I want to write my memoir. It'd be like, you don't want an infinite regress of like, I want to write my science fiction novel. You could, but it gets a little bit complicated to how to pull that off, right? I mean, it'd be interesting to do that, but you make the character actually want to write.
I like that. It's kind of interesting.
Because you can pull your experiences of like being unsure, like what does the authority of the status quo mean when you ask that entity that is, the deterministic machine learning AI, you say, but I want to do this. They're like, what? So it's like, sure, go ahead, right? Just like kind of you and Kate have done, but it's not predictive. It's not predictive of consultants. It's not predictive of. So you're like out in the nether regions of the ether to say, how do I pull myself back into this and give society something of value?
Well, this is where my mind was going, and I think we're going the same places. Like, when you have innovation as a strategy in a company, you have to be okay with failure. It is by nature inefficient. You have to allow chaos to kind of reign so that the odd kind of unicorn idea comes out and is actually successful. And that's what pays off for all this other nonsense that goes on, right?
Yeah.
But if you have something that is, you're always better off going with a risk decision. It's less effort, it's less whatever. It's always a better business decision to just let it do its thing versus take on something high risk, like someone who says, I think we could write a book and then I think we could publish it and I think that would drive business to our thing. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Big mountain to climb.
Exactly. You're like, oh, really? Right? So even though that could be right and that could be, that could change everything. If you're just looking at good, then would you ever go with a human idea? Humans are unpredictable by nature, so therefore innovation by definition is inefficient. They wouldn't like that type of what they would call innovation. Probably like evolution versus innovation, right? Something like along those lines. So I think that's kind of another place to really kind of have some fun with.
Absolutely, Adam. I think that's great. Any closing messages? We've got 5 minutes left, and I think if you want to wrap anything up, now's the time.
No, other than I'll say you heard it here first. My intention is to do a bunch of writing over the holidays as kind of a cool way to relax and enjoy it, not as a stressful must get 10 pages done or whatever, but just to plug in, I think, a little more intimately. So let's see how successful I am when we come back from the holidays.
All thumbs up, my friend. And everybody else, we hope you do the same on the videos. Like, share, subscribe. And that's Adam for you. Maybe Kate next time, maybe Adam, maybe both of them. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in, and have a good holiday season.
Take care, Dan.